It's 11:30, so let's kick off and welcome everyone to our webinar, The Great Migration, Practical Steps for a Seamless Transition from Workplace to Viva Engage. That's exactly what we're going to give you today, practical steps to migrate from Workplace to Viva Engage. So I do want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and we'll share the recording once it's uploaded. But first off, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Ngarigo people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. So I'd like to introduce you to our speakers today, and you'll see the agenda there on the right-hand side. So first up, we're going to hear from Angus Florence from Microsoft, and Angus is a Viva Engage Employee Experience Specialist, and he'll be giving you an overview of Viva Engage and answer any questions that you've got about Viva Engage. Then you'll hear from Swoop Analytics CEO, Kai Kerr. And at Swoop, we've been benchmarking Workplace and Viva Engage almost since Workplace started in 2016, all using real life data. So now we've done a comparison between Workplace and Viva Engage to show you how they stack up against each other. But more importantly, Kai will show you how you can use this data for a seamless transition to Viva Engage. And then we've got the showstopper. You'll hear from how HOYTS Group successfully migrated from Workplace to Viva Engage with the help of Engage Squared. So you'll hear from Jessica Tesoriero, who's the Talent Development Specialist for HOYTS Group, and from Andrew Polidoro from Engage Squared. And I should also introduce myself. I'm Sharon Dawson and I'm the Director of Communications at Swoop Analytics. So we'd love to make this webinar as interactive as possible. So please use the Q&A at the top of the screen to ask questions. Just ask them as we're going through each speaker so we can keep on topic, and I'll keep an eye on those questions and I'll jump in and ask the speakers. So just before we begin, I just want to remind you of the Workplace timeline. We've got a little timer ticking there because you can see we've really only got about a year to get everything sorted. So I'm sure many of you have loved Workplace and you've invested enormous amounts of time and money into making it successful. So I think it's fair to say that this is an unwanted pain for many people to have to migrate from Workplace. So let's look at this forced migration as an opportunity to really clean up your network, decide what you want to get out of it, and make a new start on Viva Engage. And that's what we're here to help you do today. So there's the Workplace timeline. And I'm going to hand over to Angus now to tell you more about Viva Engage.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharon, and welcome everybody. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and listen to us. My name is Angus Florence. For those of you who haven't met, I see a lot of familiar names on the call, but if you haven't crossed paths before, I'm what they call an employee experience specialist here at Microsoft. So it sounds fancy, but I basically look after all things part of the Viva platform, and obviously Viva Engage has been part of that for the last couple of years. But my background, I actually just ticked over 12 years at Microsoft this week, and I've spent a lot of time working with customers all over the world around doing successful Viva Engage launches. So I'm excited to share some stories today and what we've been doing. So I'll get straight into it because we've got lots to cover, and you probably don't want to hear from me. You want to listen to Kai and Jessica. So let me kick off and maybe just give everyone a quick update about what's happened over the last few years. Right? Some of you may have seen a previous product called Yammer, but I can promise you there's been a huge amount of investment and improvement. And we rebuilt Viva Engage basically from the ground up a couple of years ago, and really as a core piece of the Microsoft 365 platform. So I'm going to share some of the newer stuff that we've released in the last 12 months or so, but certainly reach out to me if we want to go deeper into these things. So when we think about Viva Engage, we sort of built it out into, if you think about where it sits inside the Microsoft ecosystem, we've obviously got Outlook and Teams and SharePoint and all kinds of stuff. When we rebuilt Viva Engage, we wanted to make sure it made sense within those existing channels, but also obviously integrated into those channels as well. So it's really the place where we come to build communities across our organization and allow employees to come together, whether it's communities of interest, communities of practice. It's obviously a core part of Viva Engage. It's a place where we want employees to be able to share their ideas, their feedback, their experiences, really a place where they can belong at something bigger than just their job and their team. We spent a lot of time and effort, I'm going to go through this today, around how we can empower your leaders and your communicators to make sure that their content and their messaging is reaching the right people at the right time, and it's two-way and it's scalable and measurable, even more importantly. And then the other piece that we found a really niche use case for Engage is around this idea of knowledge, right? How do we capture that tactic knowledge from across all those experiences that your employees have, projects they've worked on, and how do they find SMEs and that type of stuff? So a lot of work around that as well, which we'll cover today. So just, most of you who, if you have an existing Microsoft license, you will have all these already. You actually already have access to Viva Engage, right? There's no additional cost. It's built into all Microsoft 365 customers. You get access to communities where you can obviously create and join them, public, private, official, restricted, and you get some very basic analytics, but that's all built in today. You can start with that right now. We also have recently launched, or the last couple of years, launched what we call storylines. This is really your personal page where, particularly for leaders, use it a lot, but it allows you to share your own story, be a bit more authentic. You don't have to be in a community. It's kind of your own space where you can share top of mind thoughts, that sort of stuff. You can run live events through Viva Engage, and you can do this today. So from a technical perspective, we can run them through Teams, we can run them through production desks, we can support all different kinds of streams, but the actual experience themselves comes through Engage, and you get an event page and Q&A, and there's analytics as part of that. And then the final piece is you can do Q&A inside communities. Again, this is really the building block for creating that knowledge across your organization. So having specific questions and answers and best answers, you can do all that today. And this is available through Teams, through a website, through mobile apps, native mobile apps, Teams mobile apps. You can do all this today. That's already included. What I want to spend a little bit of time on, as I said, access through Outlook and Teams, and obviously rebuilt from the ground up on top of the Microsoft platform, right? So even things like when you are uploading pictures and files and sort of stuff in the back end, you don't notice it's being stored inside SharePoint, which is obviously in your tenant, which is, if you're an Australian company, it's in Australia. So we have all that sort of stuff. We take privacy and security very, very seriously. Now, we can expand, and this is what's probably new over the last couple of years, is with an additional license, a Viva Engage license, premium license, you can add some additional functionality. So things like leadership and communications. I'm going to spend most of my time on this today. We've also baked in Copilot into the product as well. So there's some really interesting, not just generative AI things where we can help you create content, but actually doing things like auto summarization and understanding the content inside your platform. And then we also, I know a lot of customers have multiple tenants, and in fact, Viva Engage is the only tool in the stack that will allow you to have a single community conversation post that can span multiple tenants, right? So if you've got different tenants in different parts of the world, you can have a single conversation and track across those, which is really cool. We've done a lot of work around analytics. I spent a little bit of time on that as well. And yeah, so why don't we just jump in actually, and I'll just start showing you some of this stuff so you can see how it works. So let's talk firstly about leadership and communications. So obviously everything in Engage starts with a post, right? And so you need the content in there. One of the tricky things a lot of people have done in the past is like, what do I put in that little box at the top of the screen to make it important? I know our friends at Swoop, and we'll talk about this in a second, but they've done a huge amount of research about what makes a good post, what gets good responses, most reactions, drives the most engagement, right? So we've learned as well from all our stuff, and we've actually embedded Copilot inside Viva Engage, so you can start to ask it to start drafting posts for you. You can change the tone. You can ask it to generate FAQs based on the post, change the actually change the post how they work. So it's actually a really good way, and it doesn't post for you, but allows you to get the 80% there, and then you can tweak it before you send it out yourself. We've also introduced a new concept called articles. So traditionally in social media posts, you get the text at the top and then the attachments at the bottom. we've had a lot of customers ask, especially in the retail and frontline worker space, I don't want all my employees to have to go to an intranet to have nicely formatted articles. Can we do that within Viva Engage? And so we've released a new post type called Article, which, as you can see here, creates almost like intranet SharePoint style posts, but they're embedded directly in Engage. You get the likes, the comments, the shares, all the same functionality, but you don't have to leave the app. And it works on mobile too. So Articles is a really big one that's driving a lot of good engagement. Leadership announcements and audiences. So you can now identify key leaders across your company, and for each leader you can identify one or more audiences, which is going to allow you to target specific content to specific people and then measure that. There's a whole bunch of analytics around that as well. So it's a really good way to make sure that your leadership messages are being seen by the right people and at the right time, and then being able to measure those. We've introduced a new concept called AMAs. So again, we have the live events that you can stream video into, but often we just want to do more text-based events. So having a leader open up. And in fact, in Microsoft, we have a lot of AMAs leading up to a live event. So we'll do an AMA maybe the week before an event. So when the event is live in video, they can use the AMA to drive that conversation and what were the top questions and answers inside those AMAs. And then we pull all that leadership and communication stuff together in this new concept called Leadership Corner, right? So it's basically, we still have the home feed, and you can customize that, but Leadership Corner basically brings, as I log in, all the messages and content from my direct chain of leaders into a single place. I can see any AMAs coming up, any events, any campaigns they're supporting, all that kind of stuff. So again, really making sure we can cut through the noise and make sure those important posts really stand out inside the platform. We also have introduced this idea of official campaigns, right? Where you can create a campaign page, it can be branded, we can add a goal, so it could be money raised, hours donated, and then we can pull all those conversations across into a single feed. And then again, there's analytics in the background where you can start to track that. And we're finding with our customers that campaigns is a great way to drive engagement across your organization.
Angus, can I just jump in here? There's a couple of questions just before you keep going. These are back to some earlier slides. So is there any difference in feature set when we get in Viva Engage based on E3 or E5 type of M365 license?
No, it's exactly the same whether you use any of the E licenses, any of the F licenses for frontline, or the A licenses for academic. It's all functionality is the same across all of them.
Great. And there's a couple of questions about Copilot. So if we have an M365 Copilot license already, does it cover Viva Engage too?
No, this is Copilot built into Engage. So probably I get the question on the other side. If we don't have M365 Copilot, can we use it in Engage? And the answer is yes. So it's actually Copilot just within Engage itself. It's its own Copilot.
Okay, and a similar question, does the version of Copilot embedded in Viva Engage make calls to Bing, the web?
No, it's completely contained within the Engage platform. So it's only drawing on your own content within that. I can send, I'll after I finish here, I'll drop a link in how the Copilot in Engage works, if you like, from a technical perspective.
Thank you. And just one more question, I'll go back to you. Do Microsoft offer assistance to organisations wanting to roll out Viva Engage for the first time? Excellent question.
Excellent question, and absolutely we do. We have a ton of adoption materials that I can share so you can do it yourself. We have fast track teams. We have what's called CSAs, so clouds, I don't know what it stands for, Cloud Solution Architects. Basically, think of them as CSMs that you may be familiar with. We also have an excellent collection of partners we work with, Engage Squared and Swoop being two of the best that I've worked with. So there's lots of support helping with that. So happy to connect with. I'm not sure you saw the question, but I'm happy to connect you with those people if you need to.
Yeah, and Angus, just I guess this is a really relevant question for a lot of people with AI. Is there an option to actually disable Copilot?
Yes, all these features can be turned off. Yeah,
great. Absolutely. Over to you. Sorry to
interrupt. Targeted to certain users, like so you might just give it to the comms team as opposed to everybody. So you can turn that. You can control who gets it as well. Right. All right, great questions. Keep them coming. Let me move on to the next section, which is around this AI and knowledge sharing piece, right? So this is, again, a lot of investment we've done in the last couple of years. So as I mentioned, in the M365 version, you can have Q&A inside communities. What Answers does is it kind of sits on top of that and can extract all that knowledge and all the questions and all the answers into a single pane of glass. So Workplace, I think, had a similar tool called Knowledge Base or forget the terminology, but it's something like that. So this is, I guess, the turbo version of that, because we've backed it by Copilot and all the AI that we have in Microsoft as well. So not only does it target, so you can see on this left-hand side of the screen here, questions for you. It's actually using the Microsoft Graph to imply knowledge and expertise you might have and surface questions that you might be able to help your colleagues with, right? So really nice way to be able to make sure that the questions are finding their way to the right people. But you can also go and check, and you can follow different activities and different topics as well. And you can see, once we start to build that knowledge base up on the right there, with people are starting to type a question, it's using that knowledge base to bring back answers before they even finish typing the question. So you get a bit of an ROI based on that knowledge as well. And then that feeds all kinds of things like M365 Copilot in the background. And one of the cool things about this is, with best answers and verified answers, if you think about AI, like if we point it at crap data, it's going to give us crap answers. Right? The answers might be wrong. We don't know that. But the fact that we're engaged, we can have best answers and verified answers, and we can surface those through Copilot. We know that when our employees are asking questions, they're actually surfacing the right answer. There's some really interesting analytics in the background as well, which from a comms perspective, if you want to find out what are the top questions our employees are asking, that's a great way to then build a campaign around that. Or maybe there's some skilling or learning we need to do, but just trying to understand what questions your employees have is really important. And then these answers, like I said, they surface in Copilot, but they also surface in other parts of the Microsoft platform, right? So if you do a search in SharePoint, we can pull back the answers from Viva as well. So you can start to, even though they originated in Engage, they perforate across the entire suite, which is kind of cool. All right, let's move on to across tenants. So this is the multi-tenant stuff. So like I said, you can now have a single community or a post that spreads across multiple tenants. So if you have different companies inside your organization, governments are often in this situation where they have different tenants for different government organizations, or big multinationals will have different tenants in different places. Being able to have a single conversation that spans all of those, and you can measure it, and there's analytics behind it, has been a big ask. And so this is the only platform, it's the only tool on the platform that can actually give you that multi-tenant posting. And then really quickly, because I know Kai's going to go into analytics as well, but we have added a bunch of new analytics into the platform as well. So I'll just show you some of those when my thing catches up. Oh, I skipped a slide. Sorry, let me go back one. 25. I think, is this a video? Let me click this and see what happens. Okay, cool. So hopefully you can see that. So we've done a huge amount of work of giving you, I guess, those base level adoption style analytics, right? At a network level, at an audience level, at a community level, at a personal level, at a conversation level. We've done a lot of work trying to make you give you access to what's actually happening across your network. So we can see, by channel through to whether it's on Teams or Outlook or SharePoint or the web or the mobile apps, we can see how they do that. We've included benchmarking now, so you can compare your engagement across different sized, similar sized networks around the world. We do things like time to value, so how quickly are your employees finding the different information with announcements versus not announcements, that kind of stuff, really important for comms. And then obviously showing things like top conversations, top questions, top announcements to help you inform, what's resonating, what's not resonating, and where we need to target some of that content going forward. And then I think that is really interesting. Obviously, the sentiment, which is good. It's got a lot better recently with all the AI stuff. But I think what's really cool is we can now do things like summarize trends across your network, and give you a nice little summary about what it was, and then link off to those conversations that were happening about it. So really nice way, particularly when you get large active networks, to try and get an understanding of what's happening, again, at the network level, but you can also then do this by audience, by community, by team, etc. And then we also do some kind of interesting, that looks like a horrible slide on my side. Anyway, we do some interesting analytics around employee retention and their use of Engage, that kind of stuff, which again, you can actually get your own data based on this. But I might pause there. Happy to take questions, but it seems like a good segue to hand over to my good friend Kai at Swoop Analytics.
Angus, can we just jump in just very quickly, because I know we're a little over time, but can you link answers to experts and SMEs, and can those SMEs self-manage the knowledge in those answers?
I'll say yes, and I'll
okay.
share. I don't want to use up any more time. I'll put some stuff in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. There's some other questions if you can answer
I'll have a look at
those
the
too.
chat now and go through those.
Great.
Yeah.
Over to you, Kai.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Kai, and I'm the CEO and one of three co-founders of Swoop, and a very dear colleague of Sharon. As Sharon mentioned in the beginning, all of you on the workplace here today didn't sort of kind of come here voluntarily, right? You have a platform you're really happy with, and now you're finding you in a position where you have to look for alternatives. We were one of the very first analytics partners for Workplace back in 2016, 17, and we know the platform really well, and I know how committed people have been to it, and I think it's also fair to say, and I think Angus, you wouldn't mind me saying this. I think it's been really good for Viva Engage, or for the Yammer that Workplace came about. And we can see the benchmarking we were doing back in 2018, that there was certainly the engagement rates on Workplace were higher. But then Viva Engage had some other benefits in terms of deeper conversations, but we can certainly see that there was a lot happening. Now that I think also realistically forced Microsoft to really catch up. And what I want to show you is here what it looks like more like today. And now the features, they're not features basically I'm showing you on the screen here. This is benchmarking that we've done over the last 10 years, those particular things. We're not benchmarking features, by the way, but what we do at Swoop Analytics is we very much care and analyze the nature of the conversations and the relationships that are being built as a result of using either Workplace or Viva Engage. So we look at things such like, are there replies to posts? How many people reply to a post? Because we're so motivated by understanding the nature of the conversations. And you can see it's a tie between the two. Actually, this surprised me because in the early days, we saw there was a lot of reactions happening on Workplace, but not so many replies. It seemed more like a broadcasting platform, but the two is now they've come up and they're about the same. With two-way relationships, we know that that's a part that many organizations are really looking for to ensure that we form these stronger connections between people. And you can see here that Viva Engage leads slightly, but not much over Workplace. So they're very strong platforms to achieve both of these, both the replies and the two-way relationships. We looked at what we call the influencer risk score, and that's really to find out how much are you relying on a small number of people to drive all the conversations and drive the interactions on Workplace and Viva Engage. And again, that's a tie. Interestingly, when it comes to public messages, there's a higher proportion of those. So where we have more open, transparent conversations on Viva Engage, and it's a bit lower on Workplace. But I also think you'll find, and I'm sure Engage Squares is going to cover this, that you'll probably find some of the things that would have been private groups on Workplace will probably find them setting up teams on Microsoft Teams. And maybe that's where smaller groups would find a more natural home. And then Viva Engage is left for these typically larger, more open, transparent communities. What surprised me actually, what you see there called the curiosity index, there we measure how often people ask questions. And it's actually a really important aspect of social interaction, asking questions. You can see a lot of the questions are coming through the Q&A here, and we wouldn't have much discussion on the call today if it wasn't by all the great questions you're asking. And Viva Engage does seem to have a higher proportion of these questions being asked. So, but you can see, like, if you add them all up, there's some few sort of, differences, but in the big scheme of things, they're quite, they're not that big. So I'd say for all of you that are finding yourself having to move away from Workplace, and you're going like, oh, now can Viva Engage actually do the same for me as what Workplace has done in the past? I'd say that I wouldn't be terribly concerned about that, looking at what the data is telling us. That doesn't guarantee a success with with Viva Engage, though. Just like your success with Workplace wasn't a guarantee just because it was Workplace. It was because of all the hard work you put in, and you've got to put the same level of hard work in getting the community to work as you've done before. Now, there are ways in which you can make that happen faster using data. And I'm just going to focus on three things here. The first thing is, as you look at how you're going to make sure you draw on the influencers that you have on workplace. There will be people that have been very active in groups. There might be people you don't even know about. They've been very active in private groups, and you may not even know about them. But when you're using data analytics, you can actually find those and ensure that they're being engaged throughout the transition and help them move on to workplace. The other one is around finding the top performing groups in workplace. I know Engage Squared is going to take you through how you can do that migration technically, but you may not have to or want to move all of them across. It's about finding the ones that generate the biggest amount of value. And we've actually, looking at those metrics that I showed you before, it's possible to identify these really high performing communities. We've done benchmarking for many, many years now. And millions of data points. So we, and Sharon and myself have been talking to a lot of those companies that have performed well in the benchmarking. So we are very confident that we can tell you what groups that are generating high levels of business value, and the data can tell you that. And that means that then you know, you have more confidence in knowing what you're going to take across to Viva Engage. Angus also talked about the importance of senior leaders in his opening talk and all the features that Microsoft have introduced in terms of the leadership corner and so forth. And I think it's really important that you get a good handle on how engaged your senior leaders are at the moment of workplace. And maybe you do some, I guess, some baselining to find out how active are they, what are they doing, and then make sure that you ensure that they replicate the good behaviors on Viva Engage. And for those of them that might have not been as active as you would like them to be on workplace, well, let's see whether we can't help them guide their behaviors and what we'd like them to do on Viva Engage. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of what that looks like. If you look at the Swoop persona, that's what we do benchmarking for individuals. And you can actually use this data to help your senior leaders. First of all, as I said, understanding what they're doing right now in workplace, and then what they should continue or start doing on Viva Engage. You can maybe see there's some little horizontal lines and blue lines where it says post, replies, and likes, and you can see there's sort of it says a 20 odd replies on 24 posts on Viva Engage, or in this case, this is Viva Engage data, and then 127 replies and 232 reactions. We actually have what we call the 1, 2, 3 rule. So what we'd like to see from senior leaders is that for every post, they try to do many more replies and then many more reactions. So 1 post, 2 replies, 3 reactions as a general rule of thumb. Are they doing that today? Maybe they are only posting, but they never reply or they don't hit the like button. So there's some missed opportunities there for your senior leaders if they are only posting. Maybe some of them only posting a little bit, but not very much. And it's some of those interactions, patterns you can look for with your senior leaders, and then see if you can move them across and start doing that on Viva Engage. Because all your colleagues are looking up what the senior leaders are doing. And the faster you can get them to do the right thing, then the faster everyone else will follow. But it's just not senior leaders that are important. We talked about how do we find influencers that are sitting there in groups and workplace. And we actually have data points, we call them influential people, and you can find your top influencers across all the workplace, all within every group and workplace. And then you know exactly who you're going to invite into a champions community or people you're going to make sure you handhold during the transition. So all the great work they've done in workplace, that they are feeling as motivated and looked after so we can ensure that there's a faster transition over to Viva Engage. The same with the top performing groups and workplace. We can help you find them so you know who to engage with, find the influencers, but also identify their communities. And you can see which ones you want to take across. So those are some of the, I guess, opportunities that you have at the moment for those of you on the call here today who's already with Swoop today on Workplace. We have a special offer where we'll basically give you continue access to Workplace, and then we're going to give you free access to a Swoop from Viva Engage. So you can simply hop from one platform to the other. Make sure you have all your data with you, so you know how to, if you like, put rocket fuel on your transition plans, and have data to support your decision making on Workplace, and then see whether or not you're replicating those behaviors as fast as possible on Viva Engage. For those of you that are not with Swoop today, well, here's an opportunity to get some very valuable analytics for Workplace that you can then continue to use over on Viva Engage. But I think we're going to jump into more about how do you actually technically do this, like how you're going to migrate content across, and also let's hear from HOYTS. So we're going to hand back to Engage Squared.
Thank you, Kai. Great presentation. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew Polidoro. I'm a senior consultant at Engage Squared, specializing in the transformation and adoption space across a variety of digital transformation initiatives. Bit of background about Engage Squared. So we are a Microsoft award-winning partner, and we do a tremendous amount of impactful work for our clients across the entire M365 suite of products, as well as some bespoke products that we can create ourselves. A fantastic example of this is what you can see on your slide here, which is the work that we did with the HOYTS Group. So we know that considering a new enterprise social network, or ESN for short, right now is at the forefront of everybody's mind, or at least it should be. With Workplace announcing its decommissioning, organizations and individuals, like many on the call today, are starting to consider alternative products. So today we're looking at the HOYTS case study, who have recently migrated their workforce and a lot of their content from Workplace to Viva Engage. And we have Jess Tesorio here today, who was the lead project from HOYTS. I'll let her quickly introduce herself.
Hi guys. So just a bit of background about me. I worked with the HOYTS Group for 8 years. 4 of those years was actually I was in the trenches. I was a frontline worker. I worked at the cinema locations, and then the other 4 years of my career is just in the HR space. So my current role is talent development, but our whole team is kind of responsible for communication and collaboration with people in the business. So I was put onto the project of launching the communication side of Viva Engage, and became heavily involved in the implementation side of it as well. That's me.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jess. And just for everyone's benefit, Jess was the real bridge between our team and hers. She supported this project tirelessly. So thank you for your help, Jess. A question for you from me is, could you tell us a bit about the journey? What challenges were you experiencing, and why did you want to make that switch to Viva Engage?
Yeah, so with us, we started our, I'm going to kind of give you guys a bit of a background in terms of Workplace. And so essentially we started using Workplace back in 2017. And to be honest, we didn't have many challenges with the platform. And that was, I think, mainly due to the fact that we didn't have anything else to go from. This was our first way first implementation of a communication platform. So like, from the frontline perspective, the only way that they were usually learning about things that were happening in the business was from their direct manager. There was no real ability for them to share information with other locations from other states, let alone New Zealand, because we have cinema locations across Australia and New Zealand. So I think when we first started with Workplace, it was a really good starting point for us. Having said that, we did experience some challenges getting our head office employees engaged with the platform. And that was mainly because they had other forms of communicating with each other, whether that was through emails, through Slack, or through Teams. So they had, unless they were directly communicating with the location or with people within the location, like from the site perspective, there wasn't really much engagement from head office. Our decision to migrate to Viva is probably a little bit different from everyone else's, because Workplace by Meta was hadn't announced that they were removing that feature. So our integration was really due to the fact that Microsoft really integrates very well with Viva Engage, and we use a number of Microsoft platforms already. So we thought it would be a really good way to leverage that relationship. But also we did a migration for our frontline crew to get access to Microsoft Teams. So it's kind of migrating both platforms then. And we really liked the fact that it integrated really well with Teams. So we were able to have all of our key tools in the one place. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us.
Yeah, great. No, thank you, Jess. And I think you touched on a few of those kind of challenges that we had to work through to ensure a successful transition. And I think for us, the way we positioned that project approach was through kind of 3 core phases that you can see in the slide here, which is underpinned by the pro-site ADKAR model of change. So phase 1, it was around discovery for us. So we worked closely with Jess and her team to gather requirements for both the people-centric needs and the technical requirements to inform and develop a migration and enterprise social network strategy. We then moved into our people enablement phase, where we started to tailor our change, training, and adoption activities specific to HOYTS' communication goals, as well as the inclusion of a brilliant launch campaign, which you'll see in the next slide, to help drive that awareness and desire and get that adoption levels of Viva Engage up. And this was all obviously backed by the comprehensive migration approach that we created in the migration phase. So I will talk about migration in a bit more detail later. I'm sure we've got lots of questions about how that looks and feels. But yeah, in the third phase for this project, we moved into migration, where we started to migrate that business critical content and groups from Workplace to Viva Engage. So just on the topic of that launch campaign, Jess, we loved creating it. I personally love creating it with you. Big fan of the Barbie launch campaign asset here. Could you share some of the tactics that you used internally to launch Viva Engage and Teams to your frontline workers?
Yeah, of course. So with us, communication was the #1 thing and pretty much our main tactic for making this to work. With change like this, you want to make sure that you're bringing everybody along the journey as much as you can. Otherwise, like, you don't want to just wake up one day and be like, yeah, here's a new communication platform that everyone's using, say goodbye to Workplace. Now here's Viva Engage. So we wanted to make sure that we were kind of raising that awareness. So we did that through having meetings with our senior stakeholders in the business, making sure that they were aware of the change and kind of generating that hype. But then we also used these amazing social tiles that you guys created for us to kind of let them know, like, this is what's happening, this is when it's happening, and making sure, like, we were, I guess, letting them know as much as possible, and yeah, trying to bring them along that journey with us. We also utilized the toolkits that you guys created, just so then that way people knew about the platform, what it would look like before they eventually had that access to go into the platform. So it's really about making sure we could communicate as much as we could, and generating that hype. Another tactic for us was to migrate data across, which we only did about 12 months of data. And that was just so when people did go onto the platform, there was something for them to look at when they got there. And I think someone mentioned this earlier about kind of culling some of the groups that you have on Workplace. It's a good time to start fresh. We had 500 groups on Workplace, and not all of those were being used. So we also used that opportunity to kind of cull it to what was relevant, and then bring that data across, and then anything else we were happy to start just like fresh. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have kind of like your own corporate communities, like we have a Fur Friends ones at HOYTS, so yeah, that one we were happy to kind of start fresh with. But yeah, that was kind of our tactic to kind of go in and make sure we're bringing everyone on this journey.
No, brilliant. I think everybody loves those pet pics on Viva Engage. It's the first community that we see created every time we work with a customer. Great. And I think the results really speak for themselves. You know, we've got some examples here of how you've been using it and consuming the tool since we've migrated over and you started using Viva Engage. So as you said, we migrated those 300 high priority groups from that original 550. This included over 36,000 threads, including posts, photos, videos, and comments in that like-for-like migration. We supported the unification of HOYTS corporate and frontline workers. I think 89% of your staff are frontline workers. We managed to unify their tool use, moving away from disjointed tools like outside the M365 environment like Facebook for Meta. We supported the community team, so Jess and her colleagues, around establishing a robust community architecture for easy content moderation and timely updates, and ultimately supported the creation of that environment where we can now cut through the noise, communicate better, have our messages heard. Now, that's obviously what we saw from our perspective, but Jess, I'm keen to hear, what impact have you seen so far? What feedback have you captured from employees, and what's next for Viva Engage?
Yeah, so I think the fact that we transitioned to Viva Engage, it was quite impactful because we were able to migrate, as I mentioned earlier, the platform with Microsoft Teams. So I think it allowed people to engage more efficiently because they had multiple ways to access the platform, and everyone in our company uses Teams. So it's like right there, it's always in their face. So yeah, I think that was a really impactful part of the transition. In terms of feedback, it's kind of always a bit tricky when you have a big change like this. So sometimes I would just take some of the feedback with a grain of salt because we did have a communication platform. People have a certain expectation of what to expect, like of what the platform should and shouldn't do. So majority of feedback that we kind of had was about the notifications and how that worked, because it was very different to how it was on Workplace, which was just a bit of a communication and an education piece from our perspective, just making sure we were letting people know how to turn on the notifications, and how to kind of get the most out of that. The other kind of thing that we had in terms of feedback was from our frontline perspective, because they don't have an email address. It was a little bit tricky with how they receive their Viva notifications, because again, it's not like for like with how Workplace was. So again, it was a bit of an education piece, but then we were also looking at different solutions, and still currently I'm looking with our IT team on how we can create like a Power App solution where they can kind of get a Workplace message when someone posts. So we're kind of I'm working with IT on that. It's definitely their department, not mine. I have no idea what I'm looking at. But on the flip side to that, I think in terms of our head office engagement, it's a lot easier for them to engage with the platform because they receive emails, kind of daily digests on what's been happening in the communities that they're a part of. And they don't have to go, oh, let me go to the app. They can just literally like and comment through email. So I think the convenience of that is really good, particularly when one of our challenges was getting our head office employees engaged. So yeah, that's been quite good. In terms of our kind of next steps, it's really just trying to make sure that like we're integrating the platform further in our company, and then making sure that we're using it to its full potential as well, because yeah, you guys are updating all the time, which is great. So making sure we're also getting the most out of it.
Jess and Andrew, do you mind if I just jump in and ask some of the questions in the Q&A?
Go for it.
Thanks. So Mel's got one saying, hi Mel, did you ask the Workplace Group admins about whether their groups could be migrated, or did corporate comms just make the call as to which groups migrated?
So basically we just like got a list just to see what kind of groups like the activity, and then we kind of culled the ones that had like no activity over a certain period of time, but then the ones that we that did have activity, we did kind of sense check with people that were leading those communities just to make sure that they were happy for us to either bring them over or cull them and start fresh. So it was kind of kind of a team effort.
Yeah, and I think, Jess, the slide that's currently on screen answers Bethany's question about how many groups did you bring across out of the 500 from Workplace. I think it was 300 high value groups.
Yeah, because the thing is we had groups for each of our cinema locations, and then they had like their own other groups that they had created, whether it was like a supervisors group or a managers group. So that's why it is rather high.
Yeah, and Ashley's similar sort of questions. Ashley would love to know what communities HOYTS has on Viva Engage. So I guess how many communities you have now as well, and how you moderate content.
Oh,
Or do you moderate content? Maybe you don't.
Not really. Like, I think because a lot of our, because we've had a communication platform before, I think a lot of people know what to post and what not to post. But we do have the way we've kind of managed some of the groups is they're all private, so no one can kind of see what's in those groups, and some of them we've created dynamic groups, so that means they will automatically get put into a certain community. Usually we've that's for all of our site-based groups, so then that way people don't have to actually go in there and add specific people, and so we've done that for a lot of our I guess even the office groups as well. We've made sure the relevant people are in those communities. And then anything else that's kind of free for them to kind of want to join, they can join. For example, the Fur Friends one, we've got a photogenic, people that like to take photos. They've created their own group as well. So yeah, I think, we don't really moderate the content in terms of this is what you must post, but we've just kind of educated them, this is what's okay. We kind of lead by example, and the good thing about having the last 12 months of data come across is that if they're unsure, they can see what's kind of been posted previously. But yeah, hope that answered the question.
Jess, I think probably a lot of people might be interested as to why you've got so many private groups, and is that purely because you've got a lot of frontline workers that are working at a particular movie theatre, and that's why they're private, so others don't need to know what their rostering is or that type of thing. Is that why?
Yeah, pretty much. Because particularly from our frontline workers perspective, a lot of the groups are who can take, a lot of the comments who can take this shift, or who closed last night, and things like that. So just to kind of
limit the noise, I guess.
Yeah.
And just the last one, sorry, Andrew, from Bethany again, have you found activity levels on Viva Engage similar to what you saw on Workplace? It's a really good question.
Yes. It hasn't been a huge, there's no huge drop. I looking at certain posts that we've posted on Workplace versus what we've done on Viva Engage, it's very much like for like. So we haven't seen a drop in engagement, which is good.
And Andrew, just this one for you about the migration. In migration, do people's storylines start from scratch, or will it include migrated content?
Yeah, so what that question is probably referring to is the home feed, or on my feed or my profile from Workplace to Viva Engage to Storyline. So currently that does not migrate, but it is in our continuous improvement list to add that as a feature to the tool. So it will be available. We find that most clients and organizations don't really want to migrate that content over anyway. Typically when we're migrating content, we try to look at what's business critical, to ensure business continuity, as opposed to some of the nice to haves. So as you saw with HOYTS, they culled quite a lot of the content because they only wanted to get the core information over, and then try to start with a fresh start as much as you could.
Over to you, Andrew.
All right, thank you. So apologies, everyone's gonna have to say goodbye to Jess for now. So thank you, Jess, so much for your time, and we loved working with you. So thank you so much. Hopefully we can do some great work in the future.
Oh, thank you. I think the reason why we hit our timelines was a big thanks to yourself and Ian. So it was our pleasure to work with you guys.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Bye.
All right. So moving away from HOYTS, sadly, how does that approach now scale out to other organizations, to prospective customers, to people like everyone on the call today? How does that apply to you, and how do you reap the benefits of migrating to Viva Engage with Engage Squared as a vendor to support that journey? So adopting an enterprise social network like Viva Engage for me is really crucial and pivotal for modern work. It serves as that bridge between the workforce, offering a fun, engaging, and really powerful social features. I personally firmly believe in bringing our personality to work, and I find that Viva Engage facilitates that. And as Angus said, if you have a Microsoft license today, you likely already have access to Viva Engage. It offers that familiar look and feel, that polished product appeal like the rest of the M365 suite. And as Jess said, that seamless integration to many of the M365 tools like Outlook, SharePoint, Teams, making it an excellent choice for an end user, but also for a communicator. But switching it on is only, for me, 1% of the battle. You need a comprehensive approach and process to transition successfully, and that's where our plan, our Engage Squared approach can come in. And to better visualize this process with us, Here's a very high level kind of project timeline that you can expect when working with us. Obviously, specific activities depend on the scale of the approach, the amount of content you want to migrate, and we can discuss some of those examples at each of these phases as I continue this presentation. Just one thing to really mention is our process is underpinned by the ProSci-ADCAR model of change, which is the gold standard in supporting some of these change initiatives. We've got excellent, extensive experience working with these approaches. We've got support with Microsoft, and we've been able to develop a robust approach for supporting organizations migrating to Viva Engage. I think one thing I really want to reiterate is our approach is customizable, it's scalable, and it works. We've proven that time and time again, as you saw with HOYTS, but HOYTS aren't the only case study we've got. Now, we typically structure our engagement in 3 phases, as you can see on the slide here. So phase 1 is that discovery and planning, where we conduct both technical and people-centric discovery workshops to ask questions and to consider things like, what's your organizational communication goals? What change activities do we require to mitigate risks? What content groups and business critical information needs to be migrated, and when? We then wrap that we encapsulate all of that information and wrap it up into a migration and enterprise social network strategy, which encapsulates all of our findings and recommendations. And then we move into phase 2. So what phase 1 allows us to do is tackle that awareness piece. So now that you're aware of what factors need to be considered, we can now move to engagement and configuration, where is predominantly the bulk of our activities. So we start bringing in the wider organization into the program, driving that desire, upskilling and uplifting individuals' capability. We take our findings from discovery to configure your Viva Engage tenant as you want it to be, aligned with your objectives, community architecture. And if you do go down that migration route, we can deploy our migration tool and begin those migration preparations. Alongside that, we will begin our change initiatives to start focusing on the heart of any enterprise social network, the people who use it. So we can host a series of training sessions, coaching to enable your communications team, your leaders, your end users, your community admins, or what you call in workplace, your group managers. And then we can also look at delivering really powerful launch campaigns or driving key messages through communication support, like what we did with HOYTS. And then finally, we get to phase 3, which is about sustaining that adoption. So here we can start to look at ways to improve adoption, sustain those adoption rates. We can look at things like the admin center for usage analytics, we can implement a variety of custom automation workflows. So at Engage Squared, we've got a lot of workflows that can automate some of the common Viva Engage challenges, such as onboarding and offboarding, community lifecycle management, compliance, and reporting. For customers who go down the premium license route, you also get access to advanced analytics, and we can combine all of that quantitative information with qualitative information that we capture from feedback, surveys, interviews, and focus groups to inform a comprehensive adoption benchmarking report and a timeline of recommended initiatives that you can take to continue to drive that adoption. And now for the most exciting part, I think, where people can have a lot of questions to ask. So bear with me, I'll try and talk through this and then we can see what comes out of it. One thing to know about this migration process that we've got, whilst it may not be the only migration approach in the world for migrating content from Workplace to Viva Engage, we are absolutely at Engage Squared the most experienced. So we have 10 years of working with this tool. We have multiple case studies which we can share on our website, we can put in the chat as well, spanning a variety of industries, organizations, content types, each with unique challenges and their own goals. We were the first vendor to partner with Microsoft using this migration approach. We've got a highly developed relationship between the product teams. We know the limitations of the tool. We know what works, what doesn't work. And our experience with this tool is what truly sets us apart from the rest of the competitors. So I hope, before I talk about the approach and how it works, I hope that gives you some confidence and assurance that by going through the migration approach with us, you are making an excellent and the correct choice. So how does that migration actually look? Well, again, it's split between kind of 4 core phases. So with every approach or process, we have a planning stage. So first, we want to understand what content you want to migrate. I saw a question in the chat earlier around how many groups did you migrate from 550? Well, this is how we start to deduce that number. So we work with you through discovery sessions and we analyze your current state in Workplace. We export your usage analytics to ensure we're only migrating the content business critical to you to ensure business continuity. But also crucially, we don't want to lose any of those cute pet pics. So we need to make sure we capture those in migration. We then move to deployment. So what we do now is deploy our tool into your Azure environment. And a really big point to reiterate on this is your data never leaves your environment. Nothing is taken externally, and there is no security or data risk. We then operate the tool, obviously. So as part of this deployment process, we can start configuring the tool to connect with your workplace instance and your Viva instance. And now we can start extracting information and importing it using existing API connectors directly into Viva Engage. And then finally, support. So we'll be there to support this entire process. We'll validate any migrated content to ensure it's coming over as expected. And we'll also map users where necessary. And just to show you how that looks, I'll be very quick. In terms of the content that migrates, it's coming across a little bit blurry on my slide. I think some latency issues, but I can quickly kind of talk you through this. So as you can see on the left, we've got a post from Workplace that's migrated perfectly like for like over into Viva Engage. It takes the comment order, the GIFs, the attachments, the tags, the user, the dates, and the way it migrates the post, we'll have a timestamp on it to say when it was first originally posted. So you know, as a new user, this isn't a new post, this is a migrated post, and you have those clear timestamps to indicate that. Similarly here, so what you can see in this screenshot, maybe not so clearly, but at the top we have a user who has now left the organization, but their post is still being migrated over. So what that does, we can set up a historical username. This can be configured how you want it. In this case, we've used historical user. So you know that that user is no longer works for the organization, but we have to give them or assign them a name in Azure directory. Videos copy over like for like, reactions, everything. So it's a very great tool that, like I said, converts or migrates content like for like over in both desktop and mobile format. So with our 4 minutes left, I'll just quickly close. So if you are interested in finding out a bit more about what that process could look like, or if you want support around some of the change activities, we've put together a themed kind of checklist of questions you should start asking yourself or your organization to consider ahead of a migration around your current state use, your licensing approach, migration scope, and then what support you need around people and change. So if you do want to find out a bit more about what we can do to help you, there's an email on the screen there for you to contact, or we've got many people in the chat who can answer some questions.
Andrew, thank you so much. We've got heaps of questions we'll try to get to, so we've got a few minutes. Angus, this one's probably for you. I think you've been answering some of it in the chat, but can we post on behalf of leaders on Viva Engage's basic plan, or post from a team account instead of from a personal account?
Yeah, so you can do that in the basic plan. You can post on behalf of anyone. You can set up, so as a leader or as a individual, you can set up delegates, and you can set up a delegate manager who can then manage the other delegates for you. So that's all included with your current licensing. And yeah, if you want to do it as like a team or like a shared account, you can do that as well. You just make that shared account a delegate of the person you want to post. Sorry, if you want to post on behalf of that delegate. So yeah, it's all included. You can do that.
Thank you. And Andrew, how are you able to write to Viva Engage as the user from Workplace? Don't you have to log in as that user to be able to post as that user within Viva Engage?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Sorry.
Boris, do you want to just elaborate on that a little? Oh, hang on. There's another comment coming. No, that's
okay.
All right, Boris, maybe just jump in and add a little bit more.
Tom's answered the question, I think.
Oh, good. Here's another one. Andrew, what are the rough timeframes we can expect for migrating from Workplace to Viva Engage? How long did the process take with HOYTS? Good question.
So it's a question we get quite often. We like to position our project timelines around 8 to 10 weeks end to end. This really varies depending on the content you want to migrate. If you want to migrate 6 months of data, it can take less time. If you want to migrate 5 years of data, it's going to take a bit more time. These are really good points and questions that come out of discovery that can inform how long this is going to take us. I think my personal recommendation is up to 12 months of data as a ballpark figure. I think as an organization, you need to ask yourself, Is there value migrating this content over? What does it mean for our new enterprise social network? And then similarly, some organizations like to start from scratch. So that could be another thing you can consider, and maybe just migrating a basic structure. But it's really hard to give you that number without having those conversations and understanding the scope. But
Yeah,
I think 8 to 10 weeks is a kind of ballpark figure.
Yeah, it's a good time frame. Thank you.
I just want to add something just very quickly to that. So beyond the actual data migration, we've done quite a few customers, even before like HOYTS moved across, before Workplace decided to shut down. But one of the advantages you have coming from Workplace is that your employees have built those skills to post in social networks. Often that's the hardest challenge, right? Is getting people to understand how to post, what to post, what works, what doesn't work. But you guys have all those skills already. And so often we find these Viva Engage networks become successful very quickly because when you don't have to go through that change management. Sure, you have to change platforms, but not learn new skills necessarily. It's been quite interesting.
Yeah. Really good point, Angus. And Kai, I think you started to answer this question, but this is a pretty, I guess, contentious question. In what instances would you say it's not worth implementing a new enterprise social platform?
Well, I can't think of any. No, joking aside, I mean, if employee engagement and employee communications is important to you, and I think for most organizations it is, there will be situations. I mean, for those of you who are in Workplace, it's almost like, well, why would we just scrap Workplace now it's going away and not replace it with anything else? I guess it's very much about culture. It's strategic alignment. But in most organizations today, it is really important to get to create these feedback loops and communities. It's an essential part of employee communications and aligning people with strategy. So I think it's going to be hard to do without it.
Yeah. Now, I know we're over time, so I understand if anyone's got to drop off, but if you're not in a hurry, Andrew and Angus and Kai, can I just ask a couple more questions for anyone who's keen to listen? One from Cassandra, can you migrate different types of content with differing time frames? So content from some groups might be 5 years of data, but from other groups it might be 12 months.
The answer is yes.
Okay,
Simple.
great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we migrate media attached to the post? So I guess videos, photos, yep. Will that media be visible on the post on Storyline? If yes, then how?
So the first part of that question is yes. The second part is, as I said earlier, we currently the tool doesn't migrate Storyline content over, but that is something that we are looking to implement into our tool for an optional feature for customers who do want to migrate Storyline content over. But yes, media files, videos, images, all of that will migrate over like for like.
I might just add to that, Andrew. When you look at the analytics for this, just make sure before you go like, ooh, that's no good, that you find out how many Storyline posts or timeline posts, as they're called in Workplace, do you actually have? And based on the benchmarking we've done, it is a pretty small proportion. So I wouldn't, I mean, it might be for the person who asked the question might be different, but for everyone else, I think the general rule would probably be there wouldn't be that many of them.
Yeah, yeah. And Angus, in your view, for live streams, should we use Teams or Viva Engage?
Great question. And it probably depends on the event you want to do. So if it's obviously a broader style whole company one, the great thing about doing them in Viva Engage is you get the event page prior to the event. So the way we do it at Microsoft, the way we recommend customers do it is your comms team can create the event a couple of weeks in advance. It automatically syncs with your calendars and everything because it's all integrated. And then you have an event page so your employees can participate prior to the event. So if you think about a lot of my customers in retail or frontline workers or even in an office, right? You can't just down tools and watch an event when it happens, but you want to be able to participate. So having the ability to post questions prior to the event in Engage, and then you can obviously watch the event live in Engage. And then even more importantly, what we see through the data is you might get 20 to 30% of people watch a live event. It's actually the post-event engagement is what's really important. And because it's in Engage, that event page stays, the comments stay, the question stays. And so it's a much more inclusive way of doing events. If you ran it just through Teams, if you don't join the meeting when it's actually the event when it's happening, you can't participate in the Q&A. And if you watch the recording, it's just a recording, right? There's no other context. You can't ask questions. The conversation doesn't move on. So it depends on the event and how you want to run it. From a technical perspective, there's no difference. You're actually producing them both in Teams in the back end anyway. It's more just what's the experience for the end user.
Yeah, we've got lots of case study experiences of exactly that, Angus. And I guess there's some people who don't feel comfortable to ask questions in a live Teams event, whereas when it's on Viva Engage, a day later, they've had a chance to absorb the information and then ask their questions. So there's a lot of value doing it in Viva
It's
Engage
also
that
great
way.
for the people running the event, because they can actually get context. What's top of people's mind? What are the questions they're going to have that they can prepare for, leading the lead up to the event? Yeah.
Yeah, and here's another question. When we've tried to write media to Engage using API, it doesn't appear to allow you to add that image to the Engage post. That's for you, I guess, Angus.
Maybe for me as well.
Well, for you.
I'll
Less
pass
of
that
a
one to
question, more
Andrew.
of a statement, but I guess the short answer is that's why you come to a partner like Engage Squared with a specialist tool that can enable that.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today.